The great ship ISS Resolute moved through deep space like a metal giant, its engines humming through endless darkness. Inside the long halls of silver and light, hundreds of soldiers and workers went about their duties. It was one of the most powerful military ships in the Allied Galactic Fleet, a place where humans and aliens worked side by side. But not everyone liked it that way. Many still believed their kind was better, smarter, or more disciplined. Marcus Hale, a human engineer with dark hair and tired eyes, walked through the corridors carrying a heavy tool case. He had served on several ships, repaired hundreds of machines, and survived countless long nights inside humming engine rooms. He loved his work but hated surprises, and today's assignment was already one. The operations officer told him his new quarters were already occupied by another engineer from the Zalari race. There was no other room available. He would have to share it. Marcus stopped at the door, reading the glowing nameplate, Taliren Ver. He sighed, then pressed his hand against the sensor. The door slid open with a hiss, and he stepped inside. The room was small but clean. Metal walls, a low light above the bed, and a desk covered with technical charts written in a strange, glowing language. At the far side stood Taliren. She was tall, her skin faintly shining like polished steel with a soft blue tint. Her hair flowed like fine silver threads, and her eyes looked like twin moons, cold and bright. She didn't glance at Marcus when he entered. "Excuse me," Marcus said, putting down his bag. "Looks like we'll be roommates." She gave a short look, her expression sharp but calm. "I requested solitude," she said in a voice that sounded musical but distant. "The captain said there is no choice," Marcus replied. "Same for me." Taliren turned back to her console and continued adjusting a power calibrator. Marcus noticed how careful and exact she was. Every motion controlled, every wire placed perfectly. He watched her for a moment, then began to unpack his things on the other side of the room. The silence between them was heavy, filled only by the faint hum of the ship. After a while, Marcus opened the storage compartment where he expected a spare bunk. Instead, he found a notice taped to the metal wall. Lower sleep pod damaged during last rotation. Awaiting replacement, he looked at the single bed across the room, wide enough for one person. His stomach dropped. "Please tell me there's another one," he muttered. "There isn't," Taliren said without turning. "I already asked engineering. They said new sleep pods will arrive in 2 weeks." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "Great, so what, we take turns sleeping?" "The bed is temperature regulated and divided by a heat barrier," she said calmly. "If you can control your human restlessness, we can both use it." Marcus blinked, unsure if she was joking. Her tone said she wasn't. "Right," he said. "No problem. I'll behave." That night, the room felt smaller than before. The engine's soft vibration ran through the walls, making everything hum. Marcus lay on one side of the bed, stiff as a board. Taliren lay on the other, facing away, her faint silver hair glowing under the dim light. Between them, the invisible energy barrier gave a low buzz, separating their body heat. He couldn't sleep. Every few seconds, the ship creaked or the ventilation whispered. He could hear her slow breathing, unsteady, calm, in rhythm with the ship itself. She worked like a machine, but now she sounded almost peaceful. Marcus turned his eyes to the ceiling, thinking about how strange life in space could be. One moment you're fixing fusion drives. The next you're sharing a bed with someone who probably thinks you're primitive. He smiled faintly at the thought. In the morning, Taliren was already awake, cleaning her tools and checking data logs. Marcus yawned and reached for his shirt. "You always up this early?" "Efficiency saves lives," she replied without emotion. He chuckled. "Guess I'm already behind then." They went to work in the engineering section together. The main reactor core of the ship was massive, glowing with power lines that pulsed through the decks. Dozens of engineers from different species moved around, checking systems. Marcus and Taliren were assigned to different panels but the same control area. Every time their eyes met, there was quiet tension. She worked with perfect precision like a living computer, while Marcus used instinct and quick thinking. By the end of the shift, Marcus was exhausted. When they returned to their shared room, he could tell Taliren still didn't trust him. She barely spoke, only asking short questions about the system reports. Before sleeping, Marcus said quietly, You don't have to act like I'm invisible. We're on the same side here." Taliren looked at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "We will see if that remains true when something breaks," she said softly. Marcus didn't know if that was a warning or a challenge. But as he lay back down tone day in the reactor control bay, they had to fix a coolant leak. The blue vapor hissed from a pipe that ran near the plasma chamber. Marcus grabbed his toolkit and moved fast. "We'll lose containment if we don't seal it in the next minute," he said. "Then follow the repair sequence," Talleyrand replied sharply. She started reading from her datapad step by step. Each instruction slow and careful. "There's no time for that," Marcus said. He reached out and twisted the valve manually, forcing the vapor to slow down. Sparks flew and the metal burned his gloves. Talleyrand's silver eyes widened. "You humans act before thinking." "And yet it worked," he said, sealing the pipe with a patch. The leak stopped. The alarm lights faded. She stood there for a moment, silent. Her gaze softened slightly, but her voice stayed calm. "Reckless," she said. "But effective." Marcus smiled a little. "That's the human way." After that day, something small began to change. She didn't talk much, but her tone grew less cold. She started asking for his help with adjustments, and sometimes she even listened when he explained his shortcuts. He noticed her watching him while he worked, studying how he used touch and instinct instead of numbers. That night, back in their shared room, Marcus found her sitting at the desk, polishing a strange tool made of crystal. He sat on his bed, tired from the long day. "That thing looks delicate," he said. "It's a resonance tuner," she replied quietly. "It helps balance plasma frequency. My father made it before I joined the fleet." Marcus nodded. "Looks like it means a lot to you." She paused, her eyes lowering. He believed machines respond to emotion as much as skill. "I thought he was wrong." Marcus smiled faintly. Maybe he wasn't. The silence that followed was not cold this time. It was calm, the kind of silence that fills a room when both people understand something without saying it. When they went to sleep, Marcus noticed that Talleyrand didn't activate the full energy barrier between them. A thin line of warmth crossed the middle of the bed. For the first time, he didn't feel like a stranger. The next few days brought more challenges. The ship's communication systems began to fail, and both engineers were ordered to repair them. They worked shoulder to shoulder inside narrow tunnels filled with wires and heat. Talleyrand's long fingers moved fast, connecting fiber lines with perfect precision, while Marcus crawled through the ducts checking the manual joints. "Your methods are messy," she said one afternoon, sweat shining on her metallic skin. "But they get the job done," Marcus replied. She tilted her head slightly, then smiled, just a little, the first one he had seen. "Perhaps there is more than one way to be efficient." Marcus grinned. "Now we're talking." Later that evening, while they were recalibrating the ship's gravity stabilizers, something went wrong. A power surge made the room shake and the artificial gravity suddenly failed. Tools floated, lights flickered, and both of them drifted upward. "Hold on," Marcus shouted. Talleyrand's eyes widened as she floated past him. Marcus reached out, catching her wrist before she could hit the ceiling. They spun slowly in midair, face to face, weightless and silent. Her hair spread like silver mist, and her eyes reflected the soft light from the reactor screens. For a long second, neither moved. The sound of their breathing filled the air. Then the stabilizers reactivated, and both fell gently back to the floor. Marcus landed on his back, Talleyrand landing beside him. He laughed. "Guess that's one way to break the ice." Talleyrand blinked, confused. "Break the ice?" "It means getting past the awkward part," he said, still smiling. She looked at him for a moment, then gave a small laugh. A soft, musical sound that surprised even her. Marcus stared, amazed. "You actually laughed," he said. "Do not make it a habit, human," she said, standing up quickly, though her expression still carried that faint smile. From that night onward, their conversations grew easier. They began eating together in the mess hall, sometimes trading stories about their planets. Marcus told her about Earth, the smell of rain, the blue oceans, the taste of coffee. She listened quietly, fascinated. In return, she described the Zealer Prime, where the cities were built from crystal and machines hummed like living creatures. Marcus found himself admiring her calm strength and sharp intelligence. Talleyrand began to see that humans were not just impulsive beings. They were adaptable, creative, and full of unexpected warmth. As they returned to their quarters one night, the stars outside glowed through the small window. "You know," Marcus said softly, "this ship doesn't feel as cold anymore." Talleyrand turned to him. "Perhaps it is not the ship that changed," he said. Marcus didn't reply. He just smiled, realizing she might be right. Somewhere in that cold metal ship something warm had begun to grow. Not romance, not yet, but understanding. And that, in space as endless as this, was the rarest thing of all. The morning alarm echoed softly through the corridors of the ISS Resolute. Marcus woke up to the gentle vibration of the ship's engines, stretching his tired arms. Taliran was already awake as usual, standing beside the console and scanning through a holographic datasheet. Her silver eyes reflected the blue lights of the system displays. Marcus sat up and rubbed his face. "You never sleep in, do you?" he asked, yawning. "Machines do not rest when lives depend on them," she said simply, not looking away from the screen. Marcus smiled. "Good thing I'm not a machine, then." Taliran glanced at him, one corner of her mouth twitching slightly. "Some days I am not sure." Their small exchange was interrupted by a sudden noise, a low, pulsing hum that shook the room. The lights flickered once, then twice. Taliran immediately opened a system window. "Energy fluctuation in the main core," she said quickly. "Power levels dropping in sectors 2 through 6. Marcus's half-awake mind sharpened instantly. "That's the reactor. If it's the power matrix again, we could lose the entire drive." They both ran to the engineering bay, the sound of sirens growing louder as they moved through the corridors. Crew members rushed past them, shouting orders. Red warning lights flashed along the walls. The whole ship seemed to be trembling. When they reached the reactor chamber, it was chaos. Sparks burst from overloaded panels, and the air smelled like burning metal. The great fusion core that powered the ship glowed too bright, its color turning from calm blue to dangerous white. Chief Technician Vera, a four-armed Trilon, shouted over the noise. "Flux harmonics are collapsing. The human and Zalari systems are out of sync." Marcus scanned the readings. The hybrid engine had been designed to run on both human and Zalari tech, but the two systems often fought each other. Now they were seconds away from total overload. "Tali, we need to realign the phase converters manually," Marcus said. "That is impossible without shutting down the reactor," she replied. "Then we'll do it while it's running," he said firmly. Taliran looked at him like he had lost his mind, but she saw something in his eyes, determination mixed with calm. For once, she didn't argue. Both of them climbed into the maintenance tunnels that ran around the reactor core. Heat radiated through the metal. Every second, the pressure climbed higher. Marcus's gloves were slick with sweat as he reached for the first converter panel. "Switch the polarity coil when I say," he shouted. "Understood," Taliran said, her voice steady despite the danger. The ship groaned like a wounded beast. Sparks flew across their faces. Alarms screamed. Marcus slammed the circuit stabilizer into place while Taliran redirected the energy through the cooling channels. The whole chamber flashed with blinding light as the systems fought for balance. "Flux alignment at 76%, she called out. "Keep going," Marcus yelled back. "Don't stop!" A burst of plasma heat hit them as a valve cracked open. Taliran shielded her face, but Marcus grabbed the lever and forced it closed, burning his arm through the sleeve. He gritted his teeth, refusing to let go. "Marcus," Taliran shouted, moving toward him. "I'm fine," he shouted back. "Just keep the frequency steady." Her hands moved faster, her long fingers dancing across the controls. The glow from the reactor began to fade, shifting back to blue. The vibration slowed, the alarm softened, and finally the system's voice echoed through the chamber. Core stability restored. All levels normal. Silence filled the room. Marcus leaned against the metal wall, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. Taliran walked over to him, her eyes scanning the burn on his arm. "You are injured." "It's nothing," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You risked your life without hesitation." Marcus gave a tired grin. "Would have done the same for any system I cared about." "But this was not a system," she said quietly. "It was us." Her words hung in the air. Marcus didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Later that evening, after the chaos had settled, the crew gathered in the mess hall. The captain announced that the ship had narrowly escaped destruction, and that 2 engineers had saved everyone on board. The crew applauded, cheering their names, Marcus Hale and Taliran Vair. Marcus felt awkward under the attention, scratching his head. Taliran stood beside him, straight and composed, though her eyes glimmered with something almost human. Pride. When they returned to their shared quarters, the atmosphere was different. The air between them no longer felt cold. Marcus sat on his bed, his burned arm wrapped in a medical band. "Guess we make a good team," he said. Talleyrand looked at him, her face soft in the low light. "I misjudged you," she admitted. "You do not follow rules, yet somehow you find the right path." Marcus chuckled. "I call it instinct." She tilted her head slightly. "Instinct," she repeated. "Perhaps that is something my people lack." He looked at her, noticing how her usual sharp tone had turned gentle. "Maybe that's why we work, logic and instinct side by side." For the first time since they met, Talleyrand smiled. A real smile, small and quiet, but warm. "Perhaps odd," she said. That night, as they both lay in the shared bed, neither pretended to sleep right away. The hum of the ship was steady again, peaceful. Between them, the air felt different, not just warmer but alive, carrying the silent understanding of two people who had faced fire and lived. The great ship drifted onward through the stars, carrying its crew toward new missions and dangers ahead. But for Marcus and Talleyrand, something had already changed deep inside the metal walls of the Resolute. What began as forced sharing had become something far more powerful. A quiet bond, born in the heart of a dying reactor and sealed by trust, neither had expected to find in the endless dark of space. The ISS Resolute drifted through calm space, the stars reflecting softly off its silver hull. The ship had survived the near disaster, and the crew worked harder than ever to keep everything stable. Marcus Hale and Talleyrand Vare became the center of attention in the engineering department. People started calling them the Twin Sparks, a mix of human instinct and Zillari precision. At first, Marcus didn't like the nickname. He was a man who preferred quiet work, not fame, but every time he heard it, he couldn't help smiling, especially when Talleyrand pretended not to care but allowed herself a faint smirk. Life slowly settled into rhythm again. Marcus fixed old conduits and updated the reactor safety code. Talleyrand redesigned parts of the energy flow grid. Their teamwork became smooth, almost wordless. When one reached for a tool, the other was already handing it over. When Marcus made a joke, she no longer ignored it. Sometimes she even added her own calm, clever reply. One evening, they were called to repair a faulty gravity stabilizer near the crew quarters. It was late, and most of the corridors were quiet. The system's hum was soft, echoing under their footsteps. "Another day, another emergency," Marcus said, tapping his toolkit. "You enjoy this too much?" Talleyrand replied, crouching near a control panel. He grinned. "You mean saving the ship every other week?" "Yeah, maybe." As she worked, the lights flickered above them. The floor trembled slightly, and then, suddenly, though, the artificial gravity failed again. Marcus felt his body lift off the floor. "Not again." He groaned as he floated upward. Talleyrand pushed off the wall to reach a control terminal, her silver hair spreading like liquid light. "Stabilizers are rebooting." "Do not move too much," she said. "Easy for you to say," Marcus muttered, drifting toward her. He tried to grab a railing but missed, bumping into her instead. Both of them spun slowly in midair, face to face, suspended in silence. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything was still. No alarms, no ship sounds, just the faint hum of energy. Marcus could see the tiny reflections of the stars in her silver eyes. Talleyrand blinked once, but she didn't move away. Then the stabilizers kicked back in and both of them dropped gently to the floor. Marcus caught himself with one hand while Talleyrand landed on her knees. He couldn't stop laughing. "You have to admit, these gravity malfunctions have great timing." Talleyrand looked at him, puzzled. "Great timing." He smiled. "Never mind." "Human expression." She shook her head but looked amused. "You humans find humor in strange places." "Guess that's how we survive," he said softly. That night in their quarters, Marcus noticed Talleyrand sitting near the window watching the stars. The light from space shimmered on her metallic blue skin. He walked over, leaning against the wall. "Thinking about home?" he asked. She didn't look away from the view. "Sometimes. My world is quiet, no storms, no chaos, but also no surprises. Everything is planned from birth. Engineers are born to design. Soldiers are born to protect. I thought joining the fleet would bring freedom, but it only brought distance." Marcus listened carefully. "Sounds lonely," he said. "Perhaps," she replied. "But you, humans, and you live in chaos and still smile. You face endless dangers, but still build, still dream. I do not understand how." Marcus smiled gently. "Maybe that's what makes us human. We break, but we keep going." Talleyrand turned to him finally, her silver eyes studying his face. That is why I misjudged you. I believed humans acted without reason. But maybe your reason is hope. He looked at her for a long moment. I'll take that as a compliment. She nodded slowly. It is. Their nights became quieter after that, but the silence between them was different now. Not cold, but warm and calm. Marcus found himself thinking about her during long repair shifts. He admired her focus, her balance, the way she moved with purpose even when everything else fell apart. And though Talleyrand would never admit it aloud, she began to notice small things about him too. The way his hands worked without hesitation, his laugh when something went wrong but he fixed it anyway, his strange kindness that didn't expect anything in return. Weeks later, the ship stopped at a small supply station near the edge of a nebula. Most of the crew went out to stretch their legs, but Marcus stayed behind to finish some adjustments. Talleyrand joined him without being asked. Together, they calibrated the ship's navigation sensors while bright colors from the nebula glowed outside the viewport. Swirls of pink, blue and gold dancing in the darkness. Marcus wiped grease from his fingers. You ever seen something that beautiful before? Not with these eyes, she said softly. Our ships travel differently. We never stop to look. Then maybe you should, he said. Sometimes stopping is the best part. She tilted her head, considering his words. You see peace and stillness. I see uncertainty, yet I find myself not disliking it when you are here. Marcus chuckled quietly. Careful, Tali, that almost sounded like friendship. Her lips curved slightly. Perhaps it is, she said. The moment lingered. The nebula's colors shimmered across her face, and Marcus felt something stir inside him. Not love yet, but something deep. Like trust finally finding a place to rest. When the ship departed again, the crew could sense the new energy between them. They worked faster, laughed more. And in every department, people whispered about how the human and the alien who once argued now moved as one. One night, while lying in their shared bed, Marcus said quietly, I used to think space was empty. But it's not, is it? Talleyrand's eyes stayed closed, her voice soft in the dark. No, it only feels empty until you find someone to listen to the silence with. Marcus didn't reply. He just smiled in the dim light, realizing that somehow, somewhere between the stars and circuits, two engineers from different worlds had built something far stronger than any machine. Understanding. And in a ship full of metal and light, that was the most human thing of all. The next few days on the ISS Resolute passed quietly, but under that calm surface, tension was building. The ship was now patrolling near the outer edges of a contested star zone, a region known for pirate attacks. The crew knew it. The silence outside the hull felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Marcus Hale stood in the engineering bay, his sleeves rolled up and face smudged with grease. He was testing the new hybrid stabilizer system he and Talleyrand had designed together. It was the pride of the ship, half human technology, half Zolari design, fully experimental. If this holds, Marcus said, tapping the main control, we might finally have a reactor that doesn't explode every other week. Talleyrand looked up from her terminal. Your optimism is dangerous, Marcus Hale. He smiled. So's your logic sometimes. She didn't answer, but there was the faintest sparkle in her eyes. They had grown comfortable around each other now. Too comfortable, some might say. She no longer called him human, and he no longer joked about her being a shiny robot. They worked like parts of the same machine, each completing the other's sentence, idea, or fix. Then the alarm sounded. A sharp, high-pitched tone filled every corridor. Red lights began to flash across the ship's walls. Marcus straightened, his heart pounding. Battle alert, he said. Through the comms, the captain's voice cut in. Unidentified ships incoming. Hostile energy signatures detected. All crew to battle positions. Marcus and Talleyrand looked at each other once before racing toward the control deck. Outside, through the viewing screen, dark shapes were emerging from the edge of space. Sleek, fast raider ships with spiked armor. Pirate vessels. The first volley of plasma fire hit the Resolute's shields, shaking the entire ship. Sparks burst from the panels. Engineers shouted as systems flickered. Shield integrity at 60%, someone yelled. Marcus ran to the emergency console, scanning the readings. The energy regulators are overheating. If the shield grid collapses, we're wide open. Rerouting power, Talleyrand said quickly, her fingers flying across the glowing control pads. But the Zalari system cannot sustain the flux alone. Then we'll give it a human push, Marcus said. He reached under the console and flipped open a manual override. The ship groaned as he forced power from the auxiliary engines into the main shield buffer. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the power held steady. But another blast struck the ship's rear section, throwing them both to the floor. Smoke filled the air. "Engineering Deck 3 is hit," came a voice through the radio. "We've got fires and pressure loss." Marcus coughed and grabbed his toolkit. "Tali, you stay on the grid. I'll patch the coolant line." But Talleyrand stepped in front of him. "You cannot go there alone. The hull is unstable." "I've worked in worse," Marcus said, already moving toward the hatch. She hesitated for half a second before following him. "Then we both go." The lower engineering deck was chaos, sparks, smoke, and the sharp hiss of escaping air. Emergency shields kept the vacuum out, but the floor was trembling under their boots. Marcus found the broken coolant pipe, spraying blue mist across the wall. He grabbed a fusion clamp, shouting, "Hold the pressure steady." Talleyrand braced herself, using both arms to twist the main valve. The force shook her body, but she didn't let go. The spray slowed, and Marcus slammed the clamp into place, sealing the break. For a moment, they stood there breathing hard, surrounded by the sound of the ship's wounded heartbeat. Then another explosion roared through the deck, closer this time. The blast wave threw them both backward. Metal shards flew past, slicing through panels. Marcus hit the wall hard, pain shooting through his shoulder. He tried to stand, but the deck was collapsing. Through the smoke, he saw Talleyrand trapped under a fallen support beam. Without thinking, he ran to her. "Don't move!" he shouted, grabbing the beam with both hands. It was heavy, far too heavy, but he pushed anyway. His muscles strained, his teeth clenched. "Come on, move." Talleyrand stared at him, her usual calm gone, replaced with raw fear. "You'll injure yourself. Better me than you," he yelled, giving one final push. The beam shifted enough for her to slide free. They fell together as the deck groaned again. Fire burst from a nearby conduit, lighting up the smoke in orange. Marcus's comm crackled. "Engineering report. Reactors losing balance." He grabbed the communicator. "This is Hale. We're alive, but we've got heavy damage near the reactor shell. We need stabilization or we're done." Talleyrand coughed, struggling to her feet. "Marcus, the reactor casing. It's cracked." His eyes widened. "If it breaches, the ship's done." Without hesitation, both of them rushed toward the reactor chamber. The glass shielding glowed dangerously bright, the energy core flickering between stability and chaos. Talleyrand opened the control panel, her voice urgent. "If we do not realign the containment fields, the ship will explode." Marcus looked at the readings. "We'll have to do it manually again. Same as before." She met his eyes. "If it fails this time, there will be no escape." Marcus gave a crooked smile. "Then we'd better not fail." They worked side by side again, moving through heat and smoke, their hands glowing under the emergency lights. Every second felt like a battle between life and death. Finally, the last stabilizer clicked into place. The reactor's light steadied. The ship's alarms faded one by one. When it was over, Marcus sank to the floor exhausted. Talleyrand knelt beside him, her metallic blue skin dim under the flickering lights. "You are reckless," she said softly, her voice trembling. "But you saved me." He smiled weakly. "Guess that makes us even." The crew's cheers filled the comm channels as the pirates retreated, their ships vanishing into the dark. The Resolute had survived again, scarred, but alive. Talleyrand looked at Marcus, her silver eyes reflecting the faint man system cannot hold the energy output much longer. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. "I know. The main plasma channel's too damaged. We patch one side, another burns out." He looked at the flickering reactor core and sighed. "We might need to shut everything down and rebuild it from scratch." "That would leave us defenseless," Talleyrand replied quietly. "We are still in hostile space." The silence stretched between them. The low hum of the dying reactor filled the room like a heartbeat running out of time. Marcus leaned on the railing and stared at the swirling light of the core. "There has to be another way," he murmured. Talleyrand turned to him slowly. "There is one way," she said after a pause. "But it is forbidden." "My people would call it reckless." Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Then it's probably the human way." She looked at him seriously. "We merge both systems, human stabilizers and Zalari energy lattice, directly. They were never meant to connect this way. If we succeed, The ship will not only survive but become stronger. But if it fails, he nodded, then the whole thing blows. Her silver eyes met his dark ones. Yes. He stared at the console for a moment, then at her. Let's do it. Without another word, they began. Taliran rerouted the Zilari conduits while Marcus opened the human energy chamber. The air was thick with heat and the smell of ozone. Sweat ran down his face as he tightened the magnetic clamps. All right, he said. On my mark, we sync the currents. Understood, she replied, her voice steady. He counted down. 3, 2, 1 now. A surge of light burst through the chamber. The ship shook violently. Alarm screamed. Taliran's hands flew across her controls, balancing the energy flow while Marcus worked to redirect the excess heat. It's too unstable, she shouted. Keep going. Marcus yelled back. Don't fight it, guide it. The floor vibrated under their feet. The core's glow turned white-hot. A wave of energy swept through the room, knocking Marcus to the floor. He heard his name through the static of the comms. Marcus. He looked up and saw Taliran standing at the main console, surrounded by sparks. She was holding the containment field manually, channeling her suit's energy to stabilize it. Stop, he shouted. You'll burn yourself. Her voice was calm but strained. This ship carries 2,000 lives. That is worth the risk. Marcus ran to her, grabbed the secondary control link, and forced his own energy pack into the circuit. The feedback burned through his gloves, but he didn't let go. Together they held the power flow, balancing it inch by inch. The light dimmed, the vibration slowed, and slowly, painfully slowly, the ship steadied. A soft chime echoed through the control bay. Reactor stable, the system's voice said. Hybrid mode operational. For a moment neither of them moved. The glow of the new core bathed the room in a calm blue light. Then Marcus laughed weakly, slumping to the floor. We actually did it, he said breathlessly. Taliran looked at the reactor, her face shining in the soft glow. The first hybrid system in fleet history, she said quietly. We did the impossible. Marcus leaned back against the wall, wincing at the pain in his hands. You mean we survived another day? She walked over and knelt beside him. For a long moment she just looked at him, the human who always risked himself for others, who never gave up even when every law of logic said he should. You humans, she said softly, you never stop fighting. Marcus looked up at her tired but smiling face. Guess we don't know how. The comm channel crackled. Engineering report. The captain's voice came through. Are we still flying? Marcus pressed the communicator. Better than flying, Captain. We're alive and powered. The hybrid system's holding steady. There was a pause. Then loud cheering echoed through the speakers. Taliran helped him stand, and they both looked through the observation window at the stars. The ship's engines glowed brighter than before, smoother, stronger. It worked, she said softly. Marcus grinned. Told you, reckless works sometimes, she smiled faintly. Perhaps your kind is not as chaotic as I once believed. Or perhaps chaos has its purpose. As the night cycle began and the stars drifted past, the two engineers stood side by side, quiet but connected by something deeper than duty. They had built more than a new engine. They had built trust, respect, and something unspoken that neither dared name yet. When they finally returned to their shared room, the air felt lighter. The hum of the engines filled the silence like a heartbeat. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, looking at his burned hands. Taliran took one gently in hers, wrapping a cool healing band around it. Your hands built life from chaos, she said softly. They should not be left broken. He looked at her, his voice low. Couldn't have done it without you. You would have tried anyway, she said. That is your way. He laughed softly. And yours? To stop you from destroying yourself, she said, her silver eyes gleaming faintly. He smiled. Guess that makes us a good team. Taliran nodded slowly. It is alive, made from both our worlds. A reflection of unity. Marcus looked at her, smiling. You're starting to sound human. She tilted her head. Or maybe you're starting to sound Zilari. They both laughed softly, the tension gone. For the first time, it didn't matter who was from which world. They were just two engineers who had built something that worked because they trusted each other. Later that night, the ship drifted quietly near a glowing nebula. Marcus and Taliran sat near the observation deck, watching the swirling colors through the large window. The stars painted faint reflections across her silver eyes. It's strange, Marcus said quietly. Before this mission, I thought space was just cold and endless. Now it feels alive. Talleyrand's gaze stayed on the stars. Maybe it was always alive. You just needed someone to see it with. He turned to look at her. The words were simple, but they held a weight that made his chest tighten. He didn't reply right away. He just sat beside her, letting the silence speak. Days passed peacefully until a message arrived from the Galactic Council. They wanted Marcus and Talleyrand to report to the capital world to present their work. It was a high honor. The captain congratulated them personally. When they reached the council station, everything was bright and enormous. The main hall was built from crystal and light, shining with colors that shifted as people walked by. Representatives from dozens of species filled the room. The council leader, an ancient alien whose voice echoed through the air, spoke with pride. Today, we honor the first successful union of human and Zalari engineering. You have proven that logic and instinct, science and intuition, can coexist. Marcus bowed his head respectfully, feeling a bit out of place among all the formalities. Talleyrand stood tall, her posture perfect, but her expression softened when she looked at him. After the ceremony, when the crowd dispersed, Marcus leaned closer and whispered, "Guess we're famous now." Talleyrand gave a small smile. "Fame is irrelevant, but what we built, that will endure." When they boarded the Resolute again, Command had a surprise waiting. They were offered separate quarters, a reward for their service. For a moment, Marcus looked at her, unsure what she would choose. She studied the message quietly, then looked up. "Do you wish to move?" He shrugged. "I don't know. The room's big enough now, but it'd feel quiet." Talleyrand's silver eyes met his. "Then perhaps we should remain as we are. The ship runs best when both systems are connected." Marcus smiled. "Couldn't have said it better myself." And so they stayed in the same shared quarters, and by choice this time. The single bed was no longer a problem. It had become part of their routine, something neither questioned anymore. The hum of the engines filled their nights, calm and steady. Weeks turned into months. Their friendship deepened, filled with quiet respect and unspoken warmth. Marcus continued teaching younger engineers, and Talleyrand began designing a new type of ship core, one that used their hybrid system as a model. Together, they wrote manuals, shared data, and improved the design. One evening, while working late, Marcus looked up from his console and said, "You ever think about what's next?" Talleyrand turned to him. "Next?" "Yeah," he said. "After all this, after the ship, the missions, what do you want to do?" She thought for a long moment. "I used to believe my duty ended with perfection, to make every system flawless. But now I think it ends when someone else learns to continue the work." Marcus nodded slowly. Passing the torch, she tilted her head. "Another human phrase?" "Yeah. Means teaching others to keep the light burning." Talleyrand's lips curved slightly. "Then perhaps that is what we will do." The ship's night lights dimmed to soft blue as they both looked out the window at the stars. The galaxy stretched before them, endless and bright. Marcus broke the silence. "You know, when this started, I thought we were too different to ever get along." Talleyrand smiled faintly. "Differences are not barriers. They are bridges, and if both sides are willing to cross," he nodded. "And I'm glad we did." She looked at him, her voice gentle. "As am I, Marcus Hale." Outside, the stars drifted by, quiet and eternal. The great ship continued its journey, powered by a core that carried the strength of two worlds, and by two hearts that had learned to beat in rhythm, not through orders or duty, but through understanding. In the silence of deep space, where countless ships had fallen and countless wars had begun, the Resolute sailed on, alive, shining, and united, proof that sometimes the smallest bond between two people can change the entire galaxy.